Thanks. I assume I don't need the mic on the basis that my lapel mic will be working, so if there's any problem there, just let me know. I want to follow on from what Neil was saying, because at the end of the day, it is important that we pursue a parliamentary strategy, but we are not going to win in Westminster. Not now, not ever. We have to get out of there. Equally, I respect the Scottish legal system. I trained in it, I practiced in it for 20 years, I was Justice Secretary for 7.5 years. But I don't doubt the ability of the Scottish legal establishment to fail to represent the sovereign will of the Scottish people. Yes, it was the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, but it was a leading Scottish judge that was presiding over, put in deliberately. And equally, when people talk about going to the Scottish courts, during my wee juncture out of politics, I was studying some of our old history. And let's remember, who transported Thomas Muir? The Scottish establishment. Who executed the martyrs of 1820? The Scottish legal establishment. Who jailed John Maclean? The Scottish legal establishment. So yes, there's an opportunity and we should pursue matters in the court, but let's not believe that they stand shoulder to shoulder with us or with the Scottish people. But we do pursue parliamentary routes. We must pursue legal routes. We do have to try diplomatic routes and reach out to international friends. But at the end of the day, as both Alec and Neil were saying, this battle will be won and lost within the people of Scotland. That was why we came so close in 2014, because we mobilised the grassroots, just not enough because there was a differential turnout between the wealthier no voting areas and the poorer yes voting areas. Had we turned that round, as we can do, then we will win overwhelmingly. Never mind the chance, never mind the opportunity, in fact, that many no voters now bitterly regret the decision that they made. So how do we mobilise it? Because it is important that we galvanise the movement is there. It's not enough to just look at opinion polls, pat yourself on the back, put it on the front page of a national newspaper and say how swell we're doing. That isn't heating the homes, paying the bills, and people are literally going under. So there's three things we have to do. First of all, we have to push for that independence convention. Why? Well, two reasons. First of all, we have to rebut the decision of the Supreme Court amongst the people of Scotland. Many will look at that and say, well, that's been settled then. They decided we can't have a referendum. The Supreme Court says this is what you jocks have to do. We've got to make sure that we say that's what the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom may say. But to paraphrase Canon Kenyon right, we're the people of Scotland and we'll decide what's right for our country and for our people. That's why that convention has to be called and called now. Equally, it was important it was called immediately after 2019's election of Boris Johnson, when we thought we couldn't get a worse Prime Minister. Things couldn't go beyond that. It should have been called then, and to be fair, the First Minister promised us in February 2020 that we'd be moving towards an independence convention. But we need an independence convention now, not simply to rebut the Supreme Court position, but to make it clear that the democratically elected representatives of Scotland make the decisions politically for Scotland, not an unelected Tory government that we've never voted for since 1955, when we rejected Boris Johnson, we've rejected Liz Truss, and now we've got Rishi Sunak. It's simply not on. Now, some may say, oh, well, the SNP might not be up for it. Well, the First Minister said there would be one, and we've got to hold her to that, and we've got to push for it and demand it. And if they won't, we've got to make sure that if they won't, others replace them, and that they will, because we've got to pull our elected people together. And let's be clear, the people who carry the votes and actually call the shots have to be the MPs and MSPs. But let's also make sure that at that convention we do pull in people who are entitled to make comment and to give support, because the support for our campaign is far wider than simply Neil or I or others, whether in the SNP, Green or elsewhere. We've got the likes of the RMT, we've got the SSP, we've got the ISP, we've got other people, we've got people in local government who we know feel that there has to be change. So it has to make sure that we galvanise the people, although ultimately it's those with a directly elected mandate in Holyrood or Westminster who call the shots. But secondly, we actually have to get our marching boots on. Many have never taken them off. They've walked far more than me. But the marches have not been getting the support because our movement that was galvanised in 2014 has had a dead hand upon it. Those who were only too proud to march or speak on the run-up to 2014 at one stage couldn't get far enough or fast enough away for the movement or from any such demonstrations that weren't controlled, directed or dictated by them, or usually presided over on a platform which gave them a media opportunity. We do need to make sure we continue marching, but we also need to make sure that we prepare for a big march next year. That's not for me, it's not for the Alba Party, it's for those that run the marches, to make sure that we coordinate, that we prepare, that we get the message out across all in the Yes movement, that we're going to have a march, not just in 2 weeks, but a march in months down the road, and we're going to make sure that we get the turnout that we did have, whether in Glasgow or whether in Edinburgh, when we could turn out 100,000 people, and we can let the Tories know that the people of Scotland say yes, that the Supreme Court is not putting us back in our box, and we can also let those who are currently have an elected mandate in Scotland, that it's not enough to shuffle the seats on the green benches. We actually want action that will change things, and that's why we need a large demonstration, and we need to prepare for that. And thirdly, we need to get out in the streets and campaign. We can get out in the streets and campaign with the claim of right. But equally, we've got to make sure that we link the current social and economic crisis with the cause of independence. Independence first boomed in the 60s when I was young because people saw an opportunity for us to be a rich country. And it was an opportunity because we look at Norway and we see the standard of living that their people have. They were poorer than us in the 1960s, and yet they've got there and we've been left behind. Now we've got a second opportunity, not just with the opportunity to use the oil and gas that remains, but through renewables. Our people can see wind turbines off their shore. They can see them on their hills, and they can't get access to electricity. The absurdity, the case for Scottish independence is made, and an energy-rich Scotland has over half of its people fuel poor. And that changes the whole dynamics. I'm probably overdressed because of the warmth in this room. I was listening to a BBC commentator coming up the road talking about warm banks are here to stay. Warm banks are here to stay. This is an energy-rich country where we should be able to provide for our people at almost cost. And yet I was campaigning in Castlemilk, and I bet if I went back to some of those flats in Dougray Drive, it just wouldn't be one flat that Kirsty and I's looked over at that won't be able to heat. It'll be the whole close won't be able to get the heating on. And let's also remember, it's going far deeper and wider than that. Because I was visiting the minister in a prosperous wee town in East Lothian that I represent. It wasn't the Pans or Tranent. And he was making the point that they've got a warm bank in their church and other places. And this is a rather prosperous town where it's commuter belt into Edinburgh, where the housing can be very expensive, but also there's new housing gone in. And you have to buy a house in East Lothian because trying to get a council house, it'll take you many, many years, if not decades. And he was saying the people that are struggling the most in his parish were actually the people in the private houses, because people are mortgaged to the hilt. Interest rates have gone up. Young families, they've no room to manoeuvre. They can't sell the car because it's on a lease. They can't send stuff back because they're tied in on contracts. Their wages aren't going up by the cost of living, and the Christmas is coming. So it's not just in the housing schemes where there is real despair, biting cold poverty, and there will be deaths. There are people in areas that once thought themselves comfortable, that once thought it would never come to their door, who are now facing the plight of poverty and indeed misery because they won't be able to heat their homes. So we've got to get that campaign out there. The way for Scotland to ensure that we can provide for our people. The promises that were made about an energy company. My office has done some research. In Scottish offshore wind, there's 6 state energy companies operating. 6. Not one from Scotland, not one from the UK. There's one from Sweden. There's one from Norway. There's one from the Republic of Ireland. There's one from United Arab Emirates. There's China. And on it goes, but none for us. And yet the energy comes ashore from off our shores or on our shores. So we've got to make that point. It's absurd. Energy-rich Scotland has fuel-poor Scots. That's got to change. An independent Scotland means you heat your home, you get jobs. Because I saw an announcement by the First Minister. There were hundreds of supply chain jobs. hundreds of supply chain jobs coming from Berwick Bank. Berwick Bank offshore wind provides more electricity for the households that we have in Scotland. We've got 2.5 million households and it provides for close to 3 million. And we're welcoming a couple of hundred jobs. Not one turbine has been built in Scotland, and yet Bifab lies idle. Arnish lies idle. It's not a couple hundred jobs. It should be tens of thousands. We should be making sure that we benefit from our resource. And in making the case for independence, none of this wheesht for independence. None of this, oh well, you can't say that. Our energy resources should not be getting sold off by the Scottish Government. We demand independence, but we demand the right that our people should benefit from a natural resource, not offshore speculators, and not even the Republic of Ireland, who I adore and admire greatly. But I don't like the situation that the Electricity Board of Ireland and the Irish are making money and our people are getting no benefit and no jobs. It's simply unacceptable. So this is about reclaiming our movement. It was taken away from us in 2014, perhaps with good reason, but it's certainly past the movement. The only way we're going to go forward is by mobilising the people of Scotland, and the only way we're going to go forward is taking the dead hand of those who currently control our movement and taking it back to the grassroots.